So, I'm going to make an extremely safe prediction, I believe. The European Union referendum is in the spotlight. And what we have is David Cameron coming out. Of course, he's on the side of staying in. So David Cameron's coming out with all sorts of supportive statements for staying in without anything being positive. He's basically saying things like the camp over in Calais, known as the jungle, is going to end up in Kent or something, Dover or somewhere if we're not careful. Okay, so it's obviously the scaremonger tactic that people have said is going to be tried on. The European Union vote is very like the Scottish independent vote, and there's a couple of things about that I just want to point out, and from that I'm basically going to say I know what the result of the referendum is going to be. How can you do that? Well, because essentially it's all going to boil down to exactly the same sort of stuff. In the Scottish referendum vote, this is just my belief from what I've found, it came down to older, more mature people who were well set up in life, with a pension to look after. In the Scottish independence vote, they voted for the status quo. In other words, anybody who's in a half-decent situation looked around and they thought, this is how the status quo treats me, I'm doing pretty well. You know what? I'd like to stay that way. And they all voted to stay with Scotland as part of the UK. Anybody who was up and coming but not made it yet, and who didn't have a massive lot of money invested and so on and so forth, was much more likely to vote for Scotland being independent. The SNP obviously believe this because they made sure that 16-year-olds got the vote. Nothing similar to that is going to happen in England for this vote, because the guy in charge of it is David Cameron. As the Prime Minister of the UK, he is going to make damn sure that no such change to the voting system would ever happen before the referendum vote came. If he delays the referendum vote, clamours might start to happen for there being 16-year-olds allowed to vote like there was in the Scottish vote. So it is going to happen in June. We're currently in February. It's 8th February 2016. And I'm going to say that it's all the same arguments for the European referendum vote as for the Scottish vote. Just remind you of what the Scottish vote was about, because you say, well, I know what it was about. It was about independence. Well, okay. If you remember, there was a big argument about the referendum vote. What should the question be? Because everyone wants their answer. This is because they analyse these things. Everyone wants their answer to be yes. So, you know, it's a big thing to the people on either side of the voting campaigns at the top. It's very important to them, though it may not seem that way to everyone else, that they're on the yes side. So it becomes a case of, should Britain stay part of the European Union? That's yes, you see. So the Prime Minister would like that. Should Britain leave the European Union? That would make yes the yes for leaving. Okay. So here we've got the Scottish question was, I've got it on my iPad, should Scotland be an independent country? And no, there was 55.30% voted no. Scotland should not leave, which is why they stayed in. And the yes was 44.70%. Okay? And the target they would have needed to win was a certain number of votes and all that. This is from the BBC website. So, there's the Scotland question. Okay? Should Scotland should Scotland be an independent country? I've got to try and watch this because, like I say, the European referendum is going to be different, you see. The European one, the question got changed from something like that, which seems fairly straightforward. The commission that looks into this, Electoral Commission, said the question is now going to be, and it's been approved, so this is the question that's going to be asked in the European referendum: should the United Kingdom remain a member of the European Union or leave the European Union? And then the first choice is remain a member of the European Union. So if you want to stay, you tick that box or cross that box. And then the second choice is leave the European Union. So you tick that box across that box if you want to leave. So you've taken a totally different approach with the question. But the fundamentals of this come down to exactly the same thing. In a nutshell, it's this. It's safe, if you're doing well, to stay in as part of the European Union. And if you're not doing very well, and you want things to be roughed up a bit and changed around a bit, then you will vote to leave. And I say that it's so similar, no matter the difference in the actual question, the fundamentals. Who's got a pension kind of there? Who's safe financially? I say that the spreads of gender, ethnicity, and all the rest of it, I say that they are all very similar across the UK to what the Scotland question faced, the electorate that question faced. So I'm going to predict to 2 decimal places what the result's going to be. I predict that should the United Kingdom remain a member of the European Union or leave the European Union, the first answer is remain a member of the European Union. And I predict that 55.30%, to 2 decimal places I'm predicting it, will say remain a member of the European Union. And I predict that for the option leave the European Union, you will get 44.70% will go for that. Okay? And that's exactly the percentages. In other words, I'm just lifting the percentages from the Scottish vote because I say similar peoples, similar outlook, not the same at all. But the questions, the fundamentals are all the same. Safety shot versus, you know what, I'm not doing that well and I'd like to see things shaken up a bit. And the youngsters, the younger people on points of principle and stuff, they'll vote for that. The older people, I'm afraid, are going to vote for the safety shot and keeping their money safe. And that's what it is. So it's very straightforward what the result's going to be. It is going to be 55.30% in favour of remaining part of the European Union and 44.70% in favour of exiting the European Union. It's as simple as that. There's really nothing complicated about it. You might say, but what about this factor? What about immigration? What about us controlling our own borders? What about this? What about that? None of that mattered in the Scottish referendum. All sorts of things should have mattered then. All sorts of questions, just as this time, all sorts of questions were not settled that should have been settled. And the people who had the power made sure that things like the pound were all up in the air. What the English government, the UK government could have done was said, look, the pound will make sure it's safe and there's a good transition no matter what happens in Scotland, right? They didn't say that. They biased it as much as possible by saying, well, who knows what will happen with the pound, okay? Right, that same bias, not bias, is already creeping in because David Cameron is not letting his own people off the leash. The cabinet ministers are not free to speak out. Michael Gove, there's a big announcement today about prisons. Michael Gove deals with that in his ministerial business, his portfolio. He's not allowed to speak today because they'll ask him all sorts of questions about, you know, David Cameron's leadership and does he want to try for being a leader, and about other stuff like does he want to be in the European Union or not. So already stuff is being biased and people are being clamped. So it's so similar. I say it's not identical, but boy, it's so similar. That's going to be the result. 55% for remaining, 44% for leaving. In other words, it'll be close, but not close enough. It's not going to be Hillary Clinton. I'm going to do a coin toss close to see if she wins the Democratic nomination. Let's put it like that. It's going to be something very like 55% to stay in the European Union and 45% or so to stay out. I've given you it to 2 decimal places. It's whatever the Scottish figures are. Okay? It's just safety shot versus let's take a chance and on a point of principle. And I was surprised, you see, that things like YouTube videos didn't get that many hits. Like I did one. Didn't get that many hits on the Scottish referendum. And I thought, well, surely people are scrabbling around looking for all the information they can possibly gather. No, they weren't. People were looking to their own internal situation, navel-gazing and saying, well, you know, I've got a good pension and my children have got a job in Scotland and that job is dependent on English money and being in Britain, so I'm not going to take a chance. And so you would get a situation where younger people would easily vote for Scotland being independent. And older people would say, no, safety shot every time. And it's exactly that with the European Union. I think we should get out because of the fundamentals. They've left the garden gate open in terms of security. The immigration thing's a disaster. They should have sorted the borders before Schengen was brought in. I mean, it should have been part of it. They just failed. Monetarily they failed because things like a place like Greece were allowed in without proper scrutiny and examination. They took Greece's word for it that all the finances were all right. We know what happened when the banks took people's word for it that their income was all right. We had the crash of 2007, 2008. Right? So the European Union has got exactly what it's worked for. It's got disasters in the area it's worked for because it hasn't done the job properly. And now we're going to pat them on the back in effect, and the European Union will give a little bit of ground here and there, but basically will stumble on as is. I don't think it's good enough, but I believe that vested interests will win out. The older, more settled people are going to vote to stay in, and they'll hold it by about 55% to 44%. Thanks for watching and listening.